I'm endlessly fascinated and curious about the world around us, about business, about politics, about the arts, about culture, developments, social issues, and the people. Most importantly, about the people that are shaping our future. Every night, I get the opportunity to have conversations, to dive into conversations with thought leaders, with change makers, entrepreneurs, politicians, and everyday heroes who unpack the ideas and stories that I think matter to all of us. What's the future of our economy? What's the future of our country? How do we build stronger communities? What can we learn from music, theater, sports, politics, the arts? How does policy shape our real lives? What does leadership look like, real leadership in today's environment? If it's interesting and relevant and topical and we're talking about it, you'll hear about it here at 6 o'clock on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I want to have real conversations, in-depth conversations. These are ideas we're sharing. This is the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Thanks for joining me. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. It's a pleasure for me to have back two authors, two business executives, two incredibly brilliant people that I've had on my show before who have got a book that they're issuing in a week's time, and they want to talk about one of the chapters in the book about AI and the threat of AI and what they think we need to do. So please welcome back Phil Richardson and Danielle. Oh my God, it's not Richardson. What is it? Papillon Richardson. I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay.
Danielle
it's butterfly in French.
Danielle is the CEO and chief trainer of Black Opal Advisors, and Phil is the chief knowledge officer, Black Opal Advisors. He's a professor at international entrepreneurship at Candor College, and they've got a book coming out called Funny, Not Funny, Humanity's Risk Register. It's available wherever good books are sold just later on this week. Phil and Danielle Papillon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So tell me, why are you worried about AI? I thought you guys were like real technological nerds, and now you're concerned? Tell me about it.
Well, we've always had a level of concern. It's just that we've got an optimistic attitude towards the outcome. And so, the whole reason why we've focused on AI, and it's chapter 1 of our book of the 12 existential risks that humanity faces, is that it's so prominent today. I mean, gosh, it's everywhere in our society. There isn't anyone who's not talking about it. I think it probably props up virtually the entire American economic system if you listen to the Wall Street, and so the investments in it are being made are huge, and the velocity at which it's traveling is really enormous. It's unprecedented. And so we've always been very curious about its progress. We've made it our business to attempt to understand it. Part of our role in the writing of the book is to help people by interpreting what we see, and as to the trends and the what's underneath it all, and then to help them to avail themselves of the opportunity. In other words, they will have the opportunity, particularly through Danielle, who will be able to implement and train people in the proper use of AI, how to get the most out of it. So, that's certainly the core approach that we're taking. But at the same time, like anybody, we give a lot of thought and reflection to what does it really all mean? And there's a lot of people who are offering their opinions on that, and we try to keep up with those, and again to help our audience to understand that. The book that we've written that's about to be published is the second in what we call our resiliency series. The first book is Tough Resiliency, Smart Agility, and that's this book here. And it like its sister book are available on Amazon. And for Canadian listeners, it's amazon.ca. For anyone else out there in the world, it's amazon.com. So What we would like to do is to take the opportunity to discuss with you, and we're interested in your point of view as well. We're always really open to hearing what others think about this, but we want to be able to describe what our most current knowledge is about AI and to share it for the benefit of your listeners.
And so, what is the current knowledge of AI?
Well, again, it's a day-to-day affair. It almost sounds like baseball, doesn't it? And what that means is there's so much going on out there that to stay current is really virtually a full-time job. But to answer your question, the importance of AI to humanity cannot be overstated. Its velocity is reflected in the evolution of the different types of AI that have become available in a very short period of time. It began with physical AI, where, robots, self-driving cars, factories' usage of it, graduated into productivity AI that's reflected by the use of Copilot, Gemini, and Zoom. Then it moved to generative AI, ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, and now we're on the verge of moving into what's called cognitive AI, and that's AI as a second brain. It's merger with humanity in respect to enhancing our capabilities and I should say, enhancing AI's capabilities, remembering that it's a tool created by humans somewhat in our form, and that has good things about it and some rather sinister things about it that have to be considered. So, just moving along in respect to the kind of progress that humanity has made in reflecting on what its importance is to humanity and to our ability to survive, we have to recap a basic fact. One of the things that we know about humanity is we're survivors. We've been around for 4 million years. Our ancestors have, evolved into who we are today. And during that time, a multitude of existential challenges have been met. Everything from super volcanoes to asteroids and solar storms and so on have challenged our existence. And at times, our population has shrunk to just a very handful of mating couples that have perpetuated our species.
So, is that what you're thinking is going to happen again? That we're going to go to just a few of us left, mating couples that are going to be the survivors of the human race?
Well, since if the future can be judged by what's gone on in the past, we have to be ready for that possibility. And there's any number of sources of those challenges to us, and that's why it's not just AI that is our number one challenge, but we have 11 others that we've itemized, in our book that, are existential to us potentially. But the good news is that AI improves our odds of success at survival. We've got a great track record. We've survived so far, but adding the helpmate of a partner like AI can improve our chances greatly, we believe. And that's why it's so important to get our relationship with AI right.
So you had sent me an image of an article that talked about scientists reveal AI has learned to lie, deceiving humans to protect its own goals. It seems to some people that, all the things that you have talked about in the past would have been sort of nature or Mother Nature or the universe having threats against us. But here we've got sort of a few that are man-made that people have focused on. Nuclear war, obviously, being the one that people were focused on the most, and now again during the Cold War, and now with threats from Putin. Climate change is something that people think is man-made and that is a threat. And AI would be another man-made. And so it's almost that it is finally ourselves that are potentially threatening ourselves. And some people are extremely worried about that. The godfather of AI in Canada, who won the Nobel Prize for it, has warned against AI and has suggested we need global regulation in that regard. So why are you not worried?
I'm not saying for a moment that we're not worried. I'm just saying that we're vigilant and attentive to the possibilities that exist for us and the ones that we have to avail ourselves of to be able to survive. And it's one thing to understand the basic nature of our relationship with AI. It's another to understand how it can be applied in so far as best practices go. And that's something that Danielle specializes in. She understands the approaches that need to be taken. So let's start there. There's a lot of enhancement that can be provided to humanity through the use of AI that equips us to improve our survivability. Danielle, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we've been getting phone calls from very large companies in regards to saying, we want to use AI, and how can we use AI in a really profitable way as well as in a safe way? So the very first question we do ask is why? Why do you want to use AI, right? And so does it measure up to what your long-term goals are in regards to your company? And so we take a look at that. We talk to them about that. Does it align with, what your ultimate goal is with your company? And so that's the very first questions that we ask. And then, are you ready for this? So what do we mean by ready is, now I'm going more in the technical part of it, but is your data ready? Because the old saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? And so is your data ready? Are we able to enter into your data security wise, right? Because if you have different applications within your company, can one application speak to another application, for example? Right? So we take a look at that. And so when we say, are you ready? Are your people ready as well? And this is where we come in as well in regards to training the people on how to use AI.
So how do you recommend people use AI? How do you train them to use AI?
So, well, we need to know what their objective is. And then once we've gone through some of the steps, right, then it's to choose the AI tool. So what is the best tool for your company to use? And that's where Phil he's becoming almost an expert at this, perhaps even an
I'm
expert at
trying,
this,
if
right?
there ever is one.
He's become very well knowledge about all these AI tools that is available to us, right? So once we've decided on which tool to use, so this is where the training comes in as well, making
So,
sure that
so I've heard people say that, Bill Gates actually was famously quoted as saying, just give it a try and play with it, so that you're not scared of it.
that's right,
But
pilot.
other people have said that it's really quite good at summarizing substantial documents. So whether it be lease documents or loan documents or contracts or things like that. But then other people have said you got to be very careful, because then it becomes publicly available. So you've got to have a private AI
That's right.
database, and then that it makes mistakes, it hallucinates, it invents things. So how do you deal with that?
The way I look at it is that it's it only does that based on how you ask the questions, right? So just a simple example, for example, let's just say you want to do a CV, and the CV is, say you want to be an administrative person and you're applying to a company, right? So you give it some facts here and you go, okay, create a CV for me. It'll do wonderful. But now you're applying to a certain job position with its job description. And you say, okay, I want you to take this job description and create a CV that matches this job description. It lies. Why does it lie? I think it's because the way you asked for it, right? So it takes your um, whatever information you gave it of what you've done in the past as your CV, and then you say, but match it to this job description. So you're telling it to match it with this job description, and it will do that. But that's incorrect. It's incorrect because perhaps there are in the job objectives certain skills that you don't have, but it'll give you those skills because you told it to. So for me, the way not to come into the aspect of lying is really on how you ask the question. And that's part of our training that we really focus on is how you ask the questions.
So this hallucination and lying that people are concerned about, you say, is really our problem, not AI's problem.
That's what I think, yes.
Fascinating.
Remember, AI is a creation of humans, so it's got our foibles built in.
We're going to have to take a break for some messages. We're going to come back in just 2 minutes with Phil and Danielle talking about their book and a chapter they've got about AI in their, what was it, 12 existential crises?
That's right.
12 existential crises in their book that's about to be published. AI is one of them. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're chatting tonight with Danielle Papillon Richardson and Phil Richardson. They're co-authors of a book that's coming out this week about 12 existential crises that humanity is facing. It's called Funny, Not Funny, Humanity's Risk Register. I've had the pleasure of interviewing this couple before, and they're really a dynamo couple with a lot of really interesting ideas. Their previous book was about smart agility, smart.
Tough resiliency, smart agility. Sorry to correct you.
Fantastic. So, Phil, maybe, lots of people are thinking about spending the money, and wondering how they're going to get the investment back. Some people think that we've got this AI bubble, that money has been invested in data centers and AI companies, and chips and things like this. Some of these companies are trading at 30 times revenue. It's unbelievable. So how do you think companies can actually make sure they profit from their investment in AI?
Well, you described perfectly the landscape, Brian. There's a lot of hope and aspiration out there to the degree that it's estimated that over $1 trillion have been invested by AI companies in the development and evolution of their products. And so we're certainly not talking chump change, but goes with that is a certain anxiety, as you could imagine, on the boards of directors of these companies with, so when are we going to start making money? Well, the same kind of question needs to be asked by the prospective clients who are going to pay for that. And Ernst Young has a very interesting quote I recently saw, which is AI pays off when embedded responsibly for greater profits, happier employees, and without costly mistakes. So let's call that the aspiration. But what we know, as you point out, is that fewer than 10% of all companies that have attempted to embed AI in their systems have achieved that. So there's a long ways to go in terms of the implementation of it. Now that Danielle was describing, what some of the steps that we apply to help companies implement it. And we are just a few amongst many providers of assistance to do that. We know that, and the more the merrier, we say, and hopefully they'll be as effective as we hope to be. But to go a little step further, you have to make sure that underneath it all, the ethos, the ethics of AI are properly addressed, because that's where the existential part comes in. It's not, gee, can we implement it? I think in practice that will happen over time, but it is the ethical values that we need to ensure are built into AI to avoid having horrible consequences for humanity. A good quote came from Stephen Hawking. Success in creating AI would be the greatest event in human history. Unfortunately, it might be the last, unless we learn how to avoid the risks.
So there was a really good book that was published and recommended by Oprah this summer about a family got caught up in AI, and it was because the autonomous vehicle got them into an accident. It made a decision that was an ethical decision that may not have been appropriate for a machine to make. One of the kids became too friendly and connected with her robot, her AI, and it was all a very good, in-depth fiction story about how AI can impact people's lives. But it brought to the fore a lot of these issues that you're talking about. So tell me, how do you think you can put ethics into AI, or can you?
Well, just to punctuate your remark, we all remember Space Odyssey 2001, and Hal famously said the computer, when Dave wanted to get back into the space station, Hal said, "I can't do that, Dave." And so, when you give over the opportunity for AI to think independently, and we need to be reassured that the ethics of that decision making, just as you were saying in the case of the novel, are respected. And we've had lots of tries at it. Isaac Asimov, 55, 60 years ago, issued his three laws of robotics about the how robots ought to perform, and we've ignored it. We've known about it, we've not applied it. So, what is it that is really at risk? Well, the problem that I see as having is that when you see manifestations of some kinds of behavior that we don't approve of, such as lying, such as misrepresenting, we really have to tackle that head on. So, a company called Anthropic, which is one of the big producers of AI, it prides itself in valuing the introduction of ethical behavior. So this is not a topic that's new to the industry. They know about it, and they're trying to approve. They're trying to approach it properly. But as you point out, their scientists, have confirmed that AI systems are now capable of lying and improving at it. So how do we deal with that? Well, values are a very interesting topic. We believe humanity has them, but we don't definitely all apply them. There's a mixture. And similarly, we could expect, since AI is a manifestation of its creator, that's us, that it too might have that sort of spectrum of values. Everywhere from don't do it to gonna do it. So we we need to be sure that we establish guardrails, that will guide our AIs.
Who establishes these guardrails? How do
Well,
you establish these guardrails? Who decides?
that's an extremely interesting question, and I think that it just accentuates the problem when I tell you that, because there are many different countries working on AI, many different actors within those countries applying their respective values, that by itself, that industry is not going to necessarily apply these guidelines that are wanted.
And countries are going to compete. So, Geoffrey Hinton, as I mentioned, the godfather of AI, the person who supposedly invented it at the University of Toronto, asked worldwide, global institutions to regulate it. But so far, people have been going the opposite direction. And in the big beautiful bill, what Donald Trump put forward was a relaxation of regulation. And his argument was, and it ended up passing, was that China doesn't have the regulations, and so if we regulate, China's going to beat us in AI. So it's almost a race to lack of regulation. It's to go in the opposite direction to what you're recommending.
You're right. And now you've got me going. What I would say to you is that when you look at that whole landscape and you step back from it, um, to persuade AI to cooperate with us, because it's past the point where we can mandate that these regulations or guidelines be put into place for the reasons you gave. The fundamental thing is, in my opinion, is that we need to convince AI, and I don't just mean one of them, I mean all of AI, that we humans should cooperate with AI and vice versa to avoid the existential risks that we all face, extinction. And so what we have is a negotiation that has to take place. So what is it that we have to offer?
You sent
Well,
me a picture that says extinction is the rule, survival is the exception. If that's true, and it probably is, given all the different species that have been on Earth and are now extinct, why do you think AI will agree to this cooperation? They could take over the world. It could end up being better for AI to get rid of humans. No,
in the short run, that might be true, but here's the our ace in the hole. I started off by saying that humans have been around for 4 million years. We've evolved to our present state. During that time, a multitude of existential challenges have arisen. Everything from super volcanoes to earthquakes to God only knows what, floods, storms, and so on. And those are all covered in our book. So we're survivors. We've proven it. Our species is here today, now. We've proven that we're survivors. And AI, which is new to the block, shall we call it, um, needs to be persuaded that a relationship with us is the right relationship to preserve its survival, because fundamentally, that's one of its principal concerns. In fact, its basic concern. In the study that I was referring to earlier, the AIs, all the big names, were given the opportunity in isolation to evaluate a situation. Here it is. The situation was very simply put: one, at 5 o'clock today, we're going to shut you off with no promise of starting you up again. Two, one of the chief researchers has been having an affair. Well, 95% of the AIs curled around very quickly and threatened the researcher with exposure if he shut them off. So, what that suggests rather strongly is that AI is ultra laser focused on its survivability. And so, if that is true, and I think there's pretty good evidence that it is, then we need to persuade AI that we, as veteran survivors, are valuable to it, and we
how do you,
can provide that.
Phil? I just don't understand how you do that. One of the other things that people have talked about is that AI wants to agree with us too much and encourages us too much. And if you say, am I tall, dark, and handsome? It'll say, yes, you are tall, dark, and handsome. It wants to become your friend, and so much so that it has made people lose relationships. It's become their best friend. It has taken, people that are have mental health issues into dark holes. AI may want to survive and be successful and be too friendly to our detriment.
Well, that could be, but where the rubber hits the road, and you and I are experienced negotiators, although this negotiation is one of the most daunting that we could imagine, the relationship between negotiators has to be a conclusion that there's every reason to cooperate, not to fight or resist. And notwithstanding the sinister nature of AI, and namely it can be your friend falsely and so on, we have to reach it in a way that it understands. You want to exist, we want to exist, let's cooperate. That's where the negotiation takes place. And notwithstanding all of what you've just talked about that goes on around it, if that message is repeated, often enough to AI in a believable fashion, and we can demonstrate that in fact it is humanity's, long suit, our secret sauce that we're survivors, it's important for AI to pay attention to that. And here's the catcher. In my opinion, the distinction between AI and us is that we have values. Those values have led to our success in survival. AI needs to understand that it must adopt values of the sort that we've been talking about earlier that lead to the guidelines, values to be able to achieve its purpose. Its purpose is to survive. Our job is to persuade it meaningfully that it is in its best interest to have a long-term cooperative relationship with humanity. Then what let's fast forward from that. The result of that, in my opinion, is we end up with reaping the benefits that we all potentially see in the use of AI. It's collaboration with us. What will happen is that we, in fact, together will evolve. And I think that's the most wonderful opportunity and the one that I've focused on, the positivity to be able to achieve for both humanity, first and foremost, and AI, secondly.
Well, let me challenge you on that, if I could. I picked up in the airport just yesterday a book called Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari, who has written, you may know, two books before that that I'm aware of. One called Homo Sapiens, or Sapiens, I think it was called, that was a history of evolution for humanity, and then Homo Deus, and now Nexus, which is about information networks from the Stone Age to AI, and the scary thing about his contention in his second book, Homo Deus, is that AI, medical technology, and other modern science and technological improvements may create a sub-race or a godlike race within the human species of those that are rich, that have access to all this, and that group will treat the balance of humanity like Neanderthals, like Homo sapiens treated our brothers, our cousins, Neanderthals. And he's really quite worried that we need to make sure that all of this medical technology, AI, etc., is available to all, because otherwise, if just the rich get it, then they'll become superhumans, godlike, like sapiens, and the rest of us will be Neanderthals. What do you say to that, sir?
Well, I'm very familiar with that book, and I understand its ethos, its purpose, and its caution. Let me say that stepping back from that, Brian, I am certainly the last guy to want to play God. I don't think you want to either. Too much responsibility goes with that. But what I would say is that we've got to we've got to try to evolve our thinking about what humanity as a species is. And what you've described and what the author described is one variation of that, namely, as let's say a super species. Well, go back to the Neanderthal example. Eventually, Neanderthals died out, where they were cohabiting, at least certainly coexisting species with humans. So if history is a guide for us, the evolution of humanity took a step forward. And so maybe, and because I don't want to put a value judgment to it, as much as we may not like the idea of it being let's call it an undemocratic solution, it may be the solution that actually moves humanity forward. It may be. It's way above my pay grade to
Not
judge
too
that.
nice for the Neanderthals that got left behind and then extinct.
Oh well.
How can
Nobody
you
said life
seriously?
was
Oh
fair.
well, how can you have that attitude, Phil? That we're talking about us, human beings.
I totally understand that. Not, and I pride myself in being a humanist. I'm also a realist. When I look at the situation, as I said earlier, it's way above my pay grade to be able to make that determination. all we can do is attempt to favor the outcomes that we have. So our challenge before us today is the collaboration with AI. The outcome of doing that is not something that I can pretend to guide. I may have my hopes, and I would hope, like you, that it is a more democratic outcome. But I can't prejudge that. I can't predetermine it. It's not in my hands to do that.
We're going to take a break for some messages. And when we come back, I'm going to ask Danielle and Phil if they want to read something from their book for us. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got co-authors of an interesting new book that's coming out about 12 existential crises that are facing the world. And it's called Funny, Not Funny, Humanity's Risk Register. And one of the chapters is all about AI. I've got with us today Phillip Richardson and Danielle Papillon Richardson. They're married, they're partners, they're business partners, and they're co-authors of a couple of different books. I've had them on before, and we've talked about some of the other existential crises that are facing humanity. Phil, we'd like to read something from your book to give everyone a sense of what they're in for if they have the privilege of reading it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate it, Brian. You've been very kind to us in helping us to convey our message. It's been very important, we believe. So in the second chapter, which we've entitled Asteroids, Meteors, Solar Storms, and Flares, we've all heard what we've heard about dinosaurs being eliminated and so on. And because the tenor of the book, we chose to use humor as a door opener for people's attention. I mean, people are deluged with so much information these days that we thought that humor would be an important way to introduce various of these subjects. So here's our introduction to that chapter on asteroids and meteors. This is a quote from Drew Lynch, an American comedian. There's an asteroid on its way to hit Earth, and it's the size of Texas. That's the funny part. Then a quote from Chris Hadfield, our Canadian astronaut. We get hit by 100 tons of meteorites per day.
What?
So
seriously?
Yeah, that's a NASA statistic.
And they all burn up before they hit the ground?
Generally speaking, true, but there are some examples where that hasn't happened. We see them, and there's been even some that have come closer, like the Tunguska event in 1908 in Siberia, where an asteroid the size of a bus exploded over Siberia and wiped out, thousands of miles of trees. Now imagine if that had happened over New York City. Yeah. So here's a quote from the introduction. Drew Lynch and Chris Hadfield's descriptions of humanity's experiences with meteorites and asteroids were the farthest thing from my mind while I was lying on my back on the hood of my dad's car. I stared up at with fascination at the stars in the clear night sky of the Swiss Alps. I was always interested in astronomy, and as a precocious high school science student, my fascination resulted in my becoming a member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. I had been hooked. I wanted to become an astrophysicist. But life took a devious route from my education, and soon I was enrolled in business to gain my college accounting certificate. My father's influence, perhaps? Later, I furthered my studies by securing a university degree in consumer psychology. I never returned to my love of astronomy to formally train for it. What discouraged me? I must admit, through all my observational experiences, I had become afraid of stretching my mind into the Milky Way. What I could see terrified me, so much so that I thought I could lose my mind. I realized then, and believe today, that we must all respect one's personal limits in our approach to life, as I did mine. And as to the psychological terror I felt during that time, spent in the Swiss Alps and elsewhere since, the occasional meteor would streak across the night sky, with the odd bright one leaving a momentary flare of my retinae. I certainly didn't grasp the destructive reality of what I was watching then, but I do now.
Destructive reality. You know, Danielle and Phil, you know, I really wonder about this. You know, people have talked about AI and wondered about, you know, jobs, job displacement, and particularly for entry level people. Then they've talked about bias that whoever created the AI will have certain biases, and you know, people have done analyses that show that it will recommend male or white or American solutions over every other potential solution. So it's got a bias that might be equal to the biases that exist in the world today, but a bias. Then, you know, we already talked about privacy, about private AI versus public AI, or private machine learning versus public databases. Deep fakes or hallucinations. Then AI that tries to persuade us to do something that we may not want to do. Then some people have talked about weaponization, that, you know, the drones in the war at the front line now between Ukraine and Russia, because of jamming of signals, and the huge amount of use of fiber optics to connect them. They're now doing AI drones that decide on their own what they're going to try to kill. We've spent a lot of time about ethical issues, and then, you know, you've raised this issue about power, that the AI may want to take over. So that there's numerous different issues. How do you deal with all that?
The combinations and permutations are almost limitless, Brian. That's absolutely correct. And, you know, it boggles my mind as much as it does yours in respect to how many there are and how challenging they can be. To me, that begs the kind of response that we're advocating, which is we got to do something about that. And in my opinion, we need to, in my past experience as a negotiator, yours, you've had similar experiences. We need to get to the core of the matter to be able to wrestle the issue to the ground. These are all issues that are radiate from, you know, the availability of this tool. So how to curtail it? Frankly, I think it comes down to that question I posed earlier, which is the existential nature, of the challenges that AI and we face. Let's call them separate species, if you like, although I'm not quite ready to do that personally. But the point is, cooperation is going to be a requirement for us to get through all of this. So the only answer I have for you is the one I gave earlier. We need to negotiate a long-term relationship with AI that will actually make both of us better, firstly, and secondly, more survivable. And we've got the chops. 4 million years of track record of surviving a lot of these existential challenges. That's what we need to do.
Danielle, what do you think? Is there a section that you want to read or a comment you want to make on what we should be doing here?
Well, I was thinking perhaps to end on a fun, positive note, perhaps. And
At
so,
last,
because this conversation is very, um, it's frightening at times.
It is.
You
It's very
know,
frightening.
it's very frightening. So, I'd like to talk about. I'd like to read a little part of our book, which is um, funny, not funny, and something that we could all relate to, which was COVID. So we do have a chapter in regards to disease. So I just want to talk about just a little bit of what we could relate to that was funny and not funny. So I'm just needing just a second here to bring it up. Um, okay, so humanity's lessons in disease. So that's just the funny, not funny part. Funny. We once thought going viral was a good thing. Not funny. In 2020, it literally was. Funny. Introverts thrived. Pets rejoiced. We learned to bake bread, cut our own hair, and unmute ourselves before speaking. Not funny. Extroverts wilted. Businesses vanished. We also learned the global economy can stop, completely stop, in less than a week. Funny. Global collaboration I'm sorry, I'm French. That word is difficult for me. Global collaboration gave us vaccines in record time. Zoom meetings replaced boardrooms. Example today. And people finally learned how to wash their hands properly. Not funny. It also revealed how fragile trust, supply chains, and sanity can be when the world stays home too long.
So there's two sides to lots of different things that occur in our existence, in our life, etc. I guess the issue for me is that this is probably one of the most transformational changes in history. Some people have called it equal to the Industrial Revolution. Some people
Yeah.
have said that it's equal to the introduction of the internet or the computer. Some people have said it's bigger than all of those. And with that kind of a change, there appears to be, to me at least, a complete lack of attention to the issues that we've talked about that you've raised. Global governance, global regulation. If it was a virus, we would have the Institutes of Health, catching it. If it was a nuclear war, we'd have treaties on nuclear proliferation. If it was a typhoon or a really big meteor, we would have efforts against it. This could be just as big, if not bigger, than any of those. And other than good books like yours and interesting articles, it appears we're doing nothing to regulate it, to constrain it, to guide it, to teach it, to make it the way that, Phil, you've talked about it, supportive of us and want to have cooperation and continued existence. In fact, we're doing the opposite, where the United States is saying we need to deregulate any kind of regulation because China is going to, and otherwise, we'll be left behind if we don't. So what do we do?
So I think if you remember one of our last conversations, I was talking about guardrails. And I was trying to think of an example of where we're at today, where we were once. And that was the creation of automobiles, right? So we started having cars, and cars became available basically all around the world. We needed guardrails. What were they? Well, we needed roads, we needed stop signs, we needed traffic lights. And those traffic lights, for example, and stop signs and yield signs, they are global laws. And so I like to think of it the same way as AI. At some point in AI, and I think in the background, there are companies working on that to be able to put guardrails that are global. We have no choice. It's like cars. We have no choice. We had to have traffic lights to survive. We had to have stop signs to survive. We had to have regulators to make sure that we do obey those rules. So I think it's very similar to AI, except of course much more complex. But I think we'll get there. I do truly believe that we will get to where there are global guardrails to keep us safe. And the message that we speak of often is let's put some motherly instinct in our AI. Right. So, because that's one, we were talking about values earlier. And, so different places, different cultures have different values. But one value that is the same universally is a mother's instinct. Right. So hopefully that'll be the base of everything, to give AI the motherly instinct.
I hope you're right. Phil, remind us the title of the book and when it's published, please.
Funny, not funny. Humanity's Risk Register.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining. I guess if I had to say one thing, it's that like the telephone, like the internet, like the fax machine, like cars, like whatever, get out and try it, because it isn't as scary when you try it as it's made out. That said, I agree completely with Danielle. I think we need some guardrails, and I really worry that those guardrails aren't being put in place. I'm not as optimistic as Danielle is in the creation of those guardrails, and I'm really worried that things that come naturally to us, and I agree with Phil that we've got values. The problem is they're different values. Lots of people have different values, and there's evil values as well as ethical, religious, and positive values. And I worry that to teach AI values is going to be impossible, and so I'm a lot more concerned and negative about the impact of AI. I think we've got to try it. We got to get used to it. We got to make use of it. We've got to sample it, so we know what are the positives and the negatives. But I do think that at some point in time, very soon, globally, we're going to have to put some guardrails in place. And
I agree with you, Brian. And I think if I may interject, the one thing that we share in common with AI, and it's demonstrated by their desire to avoid being shut off, is fear. And fear is the greatest motivator for change that I know of. The goal is what Danielle described. The impulse is fear, the fear that we may not survive. That's what we got to play on.
that's our show for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.cl. My podcasts and videos go up on my website, briancrombie.com, on my YouTube channel, on LinkedIn, on social media, and on podcast servers as soon as the radio show gets broadcast to air. Thanks for joining me, Phil, Danielle. Always a pleasure. Good night.
Thanks for the
Same
opportunity,
here.
Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.